My Tinder date tried to sacrifice me to a demon. Look, I knew online dating was risky, but I never imagined my third date with a guy from Tinder would end with me as the guest of honor at a demonic sacrifice. It sounds like a bad horror movie, right? The kind you and your friends put on just to laugh at it. But this was actually happening. And the scariest part wasn't the chanting or the creepy knife. It was how perfectly normal everything felt, right up until the second it wasn't. It all started, as it always does, with a swipe right. His name was Julian, and his profile was a work of art. He was ridiculously handsome, dark hair, intense eyes, and a smile that was somehow both warm and mysterious. His bio quoted some obscure poet I'd never heard of, and his photos were just a parade of green flags. Him laughing with buddies, hiking a gorgeous mountain, holding a fluffy golden retriever. He looked safe. He looked perfect. A little too perfect, maybe, but I was so over guys whose opening line was, "Hey." Our first date was at a quiet coffee shop. The conversation just flowed. He was smart, funny, and paid this incredible attention to me. He asked about my job, my dreams, my dumbest childhood stories, and he listened. Like, he actually listened, with this unnerving focus, as if I were the most interesting person in the world. We talked for 3 hours straight, and by the end, I was hooked. He was Prince Charming with a data plan. The second date was his idea, a hike on a trail just outside the city. It was beautiful, secluded, totally romantic. We packed a lunch and sat on a bluff overlooking a valley. And that's where the first tiny crack in the perfect facade appeared. As we were looking out at the woods, he started talking about the place having a special energy. He called it a powerful confluence, where the veil between worlds was thin. I kind of laughed it off, figuring he was just one of those spiritual crystal and incense types. I teased him about it a bit, and he just smiled. Then, to cut an apple, he pulls something out of his backpack. It wasn't a pocket knife. It was this ornate, ancient-looking blade with a carved handle made of bone and a weird, curved edge. It looked less like hiking gear and more like a museum artifact. "Cool knife," I said, trying to sound casual. "It's a utility tool," he said, his voice completely flat. "Been in my family a long time." And again, I just explained it away. He was quirky, an old soul. It added character. That's what I told myself anyway. A few days later, he texted about date number 3. He was having a private gathering with close friends at his family's estate out in the country. He called it a special evening, a celebration of alignment. My brain, already picking out an outfit, just heard fancy dinner party where I meet the friends. I was ecstatic. This felt like a huge step. The day of, he picked me up. As we drove out of the city, the roads got narrower, darker, and more winding. We went deeper and deeper into the countryside until the pavement gave way to gravel. That's when I noticed my phone had lost all service. "Hope you're not secretly a serial killer," I joked, trying to hide my nerves. No cell service is like move number 1 in the handbook. Julian glanced over at me, his face lit by the dashboard's green glow. He gave me that smile again, the one that never quite reached his eyes. "Something like that," he said. I laughed, but a cold pit formed in my stomach. His dark humor was charming in a coffee shop. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, it felt different. Finally, we turned onto a long driveway flanked by twisted, leafless trees. And at the end of it was the house. It wasn't just a big house. It was a Gothic nightmare. All stone with sharp, pointed arches and a massive tower that looked like it was trying to stab the sky. And there were no other cars. Not one. "Where are your friends?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Oh, they're inside," he said, killing the engine. "They're waiting for the guest of honor." The second I stepped through the door, my entire body screamed, "Run!" The air was thick and cold, and it stank of incense, myrrh, and something else under it. Something coppery. The huge foyer was lit only by dozens of flickering candles that threw long, dancing shadows everywhere. And drawn on the floor in what looked like salt was a massive five-pointed star inside a circle. And then his friends appeared. They stepped out of the shadows, but they weren't the cool young professionals I'd been expecting. They were silent figures in identical, dark, hooded robes. You couldn't see their faces. They just moved slowly, deliberately. No one said a word. They just stood there, staring at me. My fancy dinner party fantasy just shattered. Julian completely changed. The charming guy from our dates was gone, replaced by this cold, commanding stranger. He took my coat, and his touch felt possessive and wrong. Then he started talking, his voice echoing in the giant hall. He talked about the vessel and the offering and how important a willing conduit was. He said his family, and I now understood he meant these people, had been searching for someone with my specific spiritual signature. He led me, or more like, pushed me gently but firmly, toward the center of that circle on the floor. In the middle of it was a flat slab of stone that looked way too much like an altar. And that's when it all slammed into place with this sickening, horrifying clarity. The energy talk, the secluded mansion, the creepy antique knife. This wasn't a party. It was a ritual. Julian raised his hands, and one of the robed figures handed him the knife from our hike. He held it up, the blade gleaming in the candlelight. "Do not be afraid," he said, his voice totally dead. "Your purpose is great. Your sacrifice will open the gate. It will anchor our patron's influence in this world." My brain split in two. Part of me was just screaming, pure animal terror. But this other, weirder part of me, the part that uses sarcasm to not die, was just thinking, seriously? This is how it ends? I get turned into a demonic pot roast because I swiped right? My tombstone is going to read good taste in profile pics, terrible taste in literally everything else. They started chanting. It was this low, guttural noise in some language I'd never heard, and it made the air vibrate. Julian stepped into the circle and started walking toward me with the knife. My eyes were darting everywhere, looking for a way out. Robed figures were swaying, lost in the chant. The front door was blocked. I was trapped. I needed a distraction, something to break the spell. I saw a huge iron candelabra perched on a rickety-looking table, its candles dripping wax onto these ancient tapestries on the wall. It was a Hail Mary. As Julian raised the knife, his eyes totally glazed over with crazy cult guy energy. I did the only thing I could think of. I dropped to the floor and faked a seizure. I'm no Meryl Streep, but I gave the performance of a lifetime. I thrashed and jerked and let out this gurgling shriek. I must have looked absolutely insane, but it worked. The chanting stopped. Julian froze, completely confused. A thrashing, screaming sacrifice clearly wasn't in the script. In that single moment of hesitation, I coiled my legs and kicked the rickety table as hard as I could. The candelabra crashed right into the tapestries. The old dry fabric went up like a Roman candle. Fire and chaos just exploded. The cultists broke formation, yelling as thick black smoke filled the room. I didn't wait around. I scrambled up and just ran. I burst through a side door into a dark hall and just kept sprinting, my lungs burning. I found a heavy back door, threw it open, and fell out into the cold night air. I didn't look back. I just ran into the dark woods, the sound of shouting and fire fading behind me. I ran until my legs just gave out, and I tumbled out of the trees onto a paved road. I have no idea how long I just laid there, gasping and shaking. Eventually, headlights appeared. A car pulled over, and an elderly couple looked down at me with horrified, concerned faces. I was a wreck, covered in soot, crying, a total mess. I gave them the short version. My date's house caught on fire. I got lost running away. They bought it. They drove me to the nearest town, and I called the police. I tried to explain where the mansion was, but how do you describe a route of unmarked gravel roads you took in the dark? I don't know if they ever found it. I never heard another word about it. When I finally got home, the first thing I did was open Tinder. Julian's profile, the perfect, charming profile, was gone. It had just vanished. I haven't been on a dating app since. That night just rewired my brain. It's not even just the fear of being sacrificed to some dark lord, it's the deception. It's knowing how easily someone can wear a charming personality like a mask to hide something truly monstrous. The world just feels different now, like there's a shadow behind every friendly smile. So here's my advice. If you're out there swiping and you find someone who seems too good to be true, who talks about energy confluences and has a family heirloom that looks like a ritual dagger, maybe just swipe left. Because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't hiding in the shadows. They're the ones offering to buy you a coffee first. So, what's your wildest or scariest dating story? I have a feeling some of you might have something that could rival this. Drop it in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories about the absolute nightmare that is modern life, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It really helps. Stay safe out there, people.